What's up everyone? Bill Lethman here for Money Evolution. In today's video, I'm going to be talking about how to avoid racking up a big pile of student debt. So this is something that may be in the minds of some of the people watching the video here today, maybe affecting you directly. You may be watching this video and you may be getting some ideas on how you can maybe help one of your kids or even one of your grandkids maybe avoid some of this student debt. So obviously college has become increasingly more and more expensive. I think in one of my other videos I talked about how when I went to college about 25 years ago, back in 1993, my very first year at Michigan State cost just $6,000. Today, my son is going to college and it's up to about $25,000 or $26,000. So costs of college have just gone through the roof. So what I want to do here is maybe outline maybe 6 or 7 tips that you can do to maybe lower some of the amount that maybe you're putting into the debt, because that's one of the big things that's a burden for a lot of people as they graduate school. In fact, lately it seems like I've been seeing all kinds of articles talking about some of the big, huge debt balances that a lot of people have. And one of them, $60,000, $70,000, $80,000 worth of debt. I've even seen some people that are in retirement that are still paying off student loan debt. So this is kind of a big issue here, and hopefully we'll give you some good ideas. So number one on my list is to set a budget. And I think like most things in life, I think we should always have a budget, or at least have an idea as to how much something is going to cost. So if you're planning your college education, I think one of the things I really would like you to do is to really think about what it is that you want that college education to do for you. So kind of have an idea more or less of what field that you're going to go into. And if you're not really sure what field that you're going to go into and it's going to end up costing you a whole bunch of debt that you're going to have to rack up, then maybe one of the things that you could consider doing is going to a community college for a year or two. Take some classes, kind of explore some options that are out there, and really kind of narrow that down, because one of the things that can really get expensive fast is when you get to the college campus and then you start changing your major. That adds a lot of extra expense, it adds a lot of extra time. So by figuring some of that out before you go away to college, that's going to really help to keep some of those costs down a little bit lower there. So have a plan. The other thing you want to do is kind of put together not only that budget, figure out how much that college education is going to cost, but also figure how much are you likely going to make after you graduate. And I think that unfortunately with the cost of college these days and how much it actually is, I think we kind of need to think about this a little bit like an investment. So how much is that education going to cost you, and what is the return on that college education? In other words, how much are some of the people that are graduating with your degree, how much are they making? And I think the last thing I want to talk about here is one of my favorite books of all time is Stephen Covey. That's The 7 Habits of Highly Effective People. And one of the biggest takeaways from that book is to begin with the end in mind. So if you think about it and kind of advance your career forward, and I know not everybody necessarily stays in their same field for their entire lifetime there, but as it stands today, what is that dream job that you want to have, and then maybe work backwards. Sometimes you might discover that, hey, there's another path that doesn't even have college in there to be able to get to where I want to go. So you want to think about that end in mind, and then kind of work your way backwards. What is that entry-level job going to be right out of school? How much does that pay? And then figure based on how much that college education is going to cost, and then how much you're going to be able to pay for it along the way. Figure how much debt are you likely to have at the end of graduation, and figure how much is that going to be in terms of like a monthly payment. And then that's going to really kind of open your eyes and really help you hopefully appreciate that college education a little bit more. So number 2 is to apply for as many grants and scholarships as you can find. And there's books out there that have a lot of that information, talking about all these little micro scholarships. I was part of the Kiwanis Club for a number of years there early on in my career. We had scholarships that we offered. They weren't big scholarships, but they were $500, sometimes $1,000. And all of that stuff can really add up. So if you get a list of all those different scholarships and apply for as many of them as you can, that's one thing that can really knock off a lot on your college tuition. Look at your parents. If they work for especially a big company, a lot of times they'll have corporate scholarships. I remember when I went to college through Chrysler. My dad worked at Chrysler. I applied for a scholarship and got $500. So hey, it didn't pay for all of my tuition, but every little bit adds up. I know that some of these scholarships or grants out there are for test scores. So we have some local colleges here that if you get a certain score on your ACT as an example, sometimes it could be as much as a full ride because they want to get those higher level students to go to school there. So take a look at that, look at all of the options. Hopefully maybe you have a guidance counselor at school that can help walk you through some of that stuff. But get some books, go to the library or go to Amazon, get one of those books that has all those scholarships in there and just apply for as many of those as you possibly can. Number 3 on the list is to consider community college. So this is something I just mentioned here a second ago, but going to a community college for a year or two can really shave a ton of money off of the total cost of that college education. And ultimately maybe mean that you're going to have less debt as well. So if you end up going to a community college for, let's say, a year or two, and then transfer those credits to a 4-year school, you're still going to get that degree from the 4-year university. So again, consider that college, community college, as a way to potentially save some money. So let me give you an example of how much money this could actually be. According to Student Loan Hero, the average cost per credit hour for a 4-year university was $325 per credit hour, compared to the average cost per credit hour at a community college was $135 per credit hour. So it's a difference of $190 per hour. If you're taking 15 credit hours per semester, $2,850 per semester, and over the course of 4 semesters or 2 years, you could save over $11,000 in tuition. So that's a really, really big deal. Again, every little bit helps, and believe me, when you get to the end of your college education and you start paying back those loans and you start looking at how much of an impact every $5,000 or $10,000 has on how much your loan repayment is going to be, you're going to really appreciate the fact that you saved a couple bucks along the way. Number 4 on the list is to consider commuting. So if you live close enough to, let's say, a 4-year school and you can drive your car there and not have to spend that money at the dorm, that could really save a lot of money as well. But I really want you to think about this because not every situation is going to make sense for that. Okay, so you've got to consider the cost of that car, especially if you have any kind of a payment, lease payment, or your parents are paying that, the cost of insurance, the cost of gas. So it may not necessarily be a situation where it saves money in every case, but again, if you live close enough and you have the extra car at your disposal, commuting to a college can save some money. Along those same lines, if you're going away to a 4-year college and you're living in a dorm, and especially most of the campuses that I'm familiar with have kind of a closed campus type of a setting, ditch the car, especially if it's costing you money, insurance, and license plate fees and gas. And besides, you don't want to be that guy that everyone comes to and says, hey, we need a ride up to here, so ditch the car. That could shave a lot of money and put that money towards maybe paying some of those tuition payments along the way. Number 5 is working while you're going to school, both in the summers and also during the school year. So I just actually read an article here just the other day that was actually kind of interesting, and it was talking a lot about how younger individuals, especially high schoolers and even college kids, aren't really working as much as previous generations. And they were basically citing that a lot of these kids are really focused on their school. And obviously that's a very good thing. But I think in this case, it does 2 things. Number 1 is it's going to put more burden on some of those student loans potentially at the end of your college degree because you're not able to pay some of those costs along the way. And also, 2, you're missing out on valuable opportunities to get work experience that employers like me love to see when I see a resume. I want to see somebody that's had some summer jobs, both working at the pizza shop and maybe some of the internship opportunities that are available. So working is going to be a very big thing. So let me give you just an example here. So the average college student, I think, comes home for maybe roughly 4 months over the summer. So let's say they just even got a $10 per hour job and they were working 40 hours per week. Over the course of that summer, they're going to have made about $6,400 over the course of those 4 months. Now, granted, there's going to be some taxes that are going to come out of that, and they're going to want to have some fun. They're maybe going to buy some things for their dorm for the upcoming year and go out and have fun with friends. But even if they could save up $4,000 or $5,000 that they could put towards that education, that's going to mean a lot. And believe me, when you start paying some of these loans back, you're going to really appreciate the fact that you've knocked that down a little bit. Also, too, especially after your first year of college, start looking for internship opportunities. Again, these are the things that employers want to see anyway. They want to see you had some work-related experience related to the field that you're in. And in my experience, some of these internships can be very lucrative, $15, $20 an hour jobs. And if you can get one of those, you might be able to actually put more like $7,000 to $10,000 towards your college education, maybe even paying close to half of a full year's tuition tuition just by the money that you make over the summer. And of course, you can still work during the school year. I think it's a great way to kind of learn to balance your time, the time you're spending on your job and the time you're spending in your studies, and if you can get a couple of a few hours, 10, 15, 20 hours per week. And again, knock off some of those loans a little bit while you're in school. That's going to be a big deal. Number 6 is to start saving some money in advance. Now, this is probably something maybe geared a little bit more towards the parents or the grandparents that may be watching this video, but obviously the more money that you can start to save now along the way, that's just going to reap multiple dividends down the road. So if you can have, even $5, $10, $15, $20,000, maybe be able to pay for a semester or two, or maybe if you're a good enough saver, maybe you can even pay for the entire college. Those are the things that you want to look for. Saving money in advance is number 6. And then number 7 is kind of skipping some of the extras. I mean, college is a lot of fun just on its own, the friendships that you're going to develop over school, but things like fraternities and sororities, just as an example, I don't have anything against those, but those can be very, very expensive. And make sure you understand, if you're going to get into some of those social organizations, not only the cost for the organization itself, but all the extras like the formals, and I got to go rent a tuxedo or have a suit for this, and I've got to get a limo, or all those things really add up. And I was never in a fraternity. I don't have any regrets for it. I had a lot of fun in college, believe me, but I think that's one thing, if you can cut some of those extras out, because again, that's, if it's going to be put on a student loan anyway, you want to try to avoid that. And so hopefully I've given you a couple of ideas and tips. The last thing I wanted to kind of circle back around, something I forgot to mention, number 1, as you're setting the budget for your school, is really kind of look at the cost of the school itself. And it can vary wildly, even if you're looking at four-year universities. Obviously, a private school tuition is going to be a lot more expensive than a public school tuition. And ultimately, at the end of the day, especially if you're putting this on a loan, is that really going to have a benefit for you? Are you going to get something out of that by paying 30%, sometimes 50%, sometimes twice as much money for a private school education as you would for a public school? And that may not make the most sense. So anyway, think about that as you're putting together the budget. Hopefully I've given you a couple of ideas and tips that can help you with this. And then also too, I just recorded a video, I think about a week or two ago, where I talk about 5 key things that you can do in your 20s to make your 20s more financially successful. So I'll put a link below for that video as well. So if you're graduating school and you have some of that debt, you're getting your first job, that's a video that you're definitely going to want to check out. So anyway, hit that like or subscribe button, and I'll see you back in one of my next videos. Thanks.